Hi everyone, welcome to the Dee-Brief with Dr. D. Real talk, real strategy, real leadership, one insight at a time. I'm your host, Dr. D, and this is your space for bold conversations, soul-deep reflections, and truth that transforms. Whether you're an executive, an entrepreneur, or an everyday change agent, this podcast is for you, navigating both public success and that private struggle. Each episode, we take a deep dive into emotional wellness, grief recovery, faith, leadership, and the tools you need to rise with clarity and with purpose. This isn't just strategy, it's healing. It's a calling. This is the Dee-Brief with Dr. D. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Dee-Brief with Dr. D. I am your host, Dr. D, and I am excited to have as our special guest my sister, my friend of so many years, Dr. Claire Green-Forde. Claire, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to do this.
And I was just saying that, I was like, how many years have I known you? It's been a while.
I think we're approaching 10, actually.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome. So this is going to be an exciting conversation because August, as we all know, it's Black Business Month. And we want to talk about really just the untold story behind the success of Black businesses, what it means to lead boldly, rest intentionally, because, that's important, but also some of the struggles that Black businesses and particularly entrepreneurs have in just burnout and just managing their businesses. So before we dive into those questions, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. I could read your bio, but there's so much that I would say. So Dr. Claire Green-Forde, if you were to explain to the audience, who is Dr. Claire, what would you say?
I would say first and foremost, I am a child of God. For me, that is the thing that is central to my life. And it is what leads me to do the things that I do, because I promise you, I would show you something other than what I'm doing right now. I am a transformational speaker, cultural architect, and mental health executive. I've been working for over 20 years in this space and helping leaders build cultures where people and, as I always say, performers thrive. I am also the founder and CEO of Dr. Claire Speaks LLC, which is a speaking and training consultancy that really focuses on helping organizations move from performative policies to transformative cultures and addressing the root causes of workplace harm.
Oh, amazing. And there's so many more things that you do, but those are such critical areas, especially today with all that we're enduring, with all that's happening in the world, and the assistance and support that people need to not only succeed and thrive, but to continue to have hope and inspiration. And that's what our podcast is about. So I want to talk about businesses for Black Business Month. I'm an entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur. We worked in many institutions in city government and private sector, and we know what it's like to work in stressful environments, to work in under-resourced environments, and burnout is real, right? So people get tired. But as entrepreneurs, when you're tired, you just, you can't stop, or you're afraid to stop because your business is your business and you're the one that's making it thrive. So let's talk a little bit about how our community, our society, or our culture tends to normalize exhaustion.
Yeah.
Normalize exhaustion as a badge of honor, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're exhausted, that means you're doing a great job. That means you're working, 22 hours a day like you're supposed to. What does that feel like, and what does that mean, particularly in the Black business community?
Yeah, I love this question. And I will also say that it is also National Wellness Month. And so this conversation, we're intersecting, what it is to be a Black entrepreneur, but also what it means as someone who navigates the world that often dehumanizes, and the impact of our experiences in our personal and professional lives. And so I think that burnout culture has been so celebrated for so long because it is really rooted in exploitation. And particularly in America and the world, there's a long history of exploiting people and communities, particularly Black bodies and Black people for their labor, for their expertise, for their ingenuity. And what that means is that we are often left in spaces where we are so deeply fractured and we pass those things on. I think we also need to look at the fact that many of us, particularly people that are Black and people are global majority or have different intersecting identities, were raised with a very painful truth. You have to work 2, 3, 4, 5 times as hard to get half as far. That's a saying that is not just cultural, it is inherited. I am an immigrant, and I also knew that those were the same sentiments I was told as a tween coming to America. In addition to making sure that I did not embarrass my family and culture, it was you're going to have to work really, really hard, and you're going to have to let people take credit for your work. You're going to have to allow people to shine while you are in the background. And that has translated into this grind that shows up in our bodies where we think that we have to keep pushing ourselves and doing more. And I would argue that many of us are navigating, depression and anxiety that is masked because of the results of this. How many of us have stayed longer at worked, signed up for the additional projects because we wanted to show that we were, the right fit and that we were not just trying to do, the 9 to 5. We wanted to learn, we wanted to contribute to the organization. And how many of us have done that only to find out a few weeks or months or a year later that the person that was going to the bar after work with your supervisor is who got the promotion, despite the fact that you raised your hand unpaid for all of those additional projects, did an amazing job, and they took your name off the presentation when they presented it to the CEO. That is the story of so many across business sectors, whether it's an attorney, a teacher, a social worker like myself, a doctor. These stories show up repeatedly. And what also is showing up is the impact on our physical and our mental health as a result of it, right? We are navigating a world that Black women in particular have earlier onset of chronic illnesses, perimenopause and menopause, our infant mortality rates. These are epidemic, and this is the result of the grind. This is the result of us thinking and being told that we have to show up and celebrate exhaustion. Because if we don't exhaust ourselves, then we are not worth it. And that is a lie. Overachievement is not empowerment. It is a response to chronic inequality and chronic dehumanization, but it's literally killing us. We have to do everything we can to not only call each other into the space to say, I see you, but to address the harms that we have so long perpetuated and passed on, because it is literally impacting our legacy and our well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you said so much in there that I'm sure our viewers can relate to, and I know I can relate to personally. I was just saying yesterday on the call, I would leave home at 6 o'clock in the morning to get to work, to drive to the work to the city. So it was about an hour to get to work, be the first one in, turn the lights on before our maintenance staff members. And then I'd be the last one to leave at 7, 8 o'clock, turn the lights off. I would come home and log in. And my youngest son, who's about to be 24, would say, Mommy, didn't you just come home from work? Why are you logging in and working again? And that's unfortunately that's not unique to me, right? That's repeated so often with so many people that we wear this as a badge of honor just to find out, as you said, the person who went to happy hour got the job, got the promotion, or took your name off the presentation. And I wonder how we got here, right? It's a culture, it's a thought process. In order to change it, we need a full mindset shift. I'm saying yesterday, it's almost like divorcing yourself from yourself, right? From your way of thinking to change that. But it not only impacts our physical wellness, but it impacts our emotional wellness.
Mhm.
So how does working to the point of exhaustion impact our emotional wellness, but not just now, for long-term success for people?
Absolutely. And I think, I love how you added in your experience because as you were speaking, I'm like, yep, I've seen you do that. And we've had some disagreements around my concerns about how much you're working. I've seen you do that, but I've also seen what happened when you try to put boundaries in place as well. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of what we're navigating. The emotional toll that we experience, I think is really important when we think about business and leadership. Our minds are our computer. If our mind is not well, our business can't be well because mental health is a business strategy. It always has been. And if you are the business, your mental health is the ultimate strategy that determines the success, longevity, or breakdown of your business. If you are chronically missing sleep, if you are chronically under eating or overeating, if you are chronically stressed, that impacts your ability to actually focus and perform. And we see the impact of psychological and mental health impacts on people, not just in, business, but in every other area of their life. It may lead to relationship challenges, difficulty retaining information. Brain fog is a really big thing that happens, particularly when we're stressed. But what we also see is that because when you're under stress, your body is in survival mode. When you are navigating systems that have you in that heightened response, it's also flooding your body with things, stress hormones, cortisol, for example, adrenaline. And those are teaching your body to just navigate through and not really address the issues. It's why when you are so overwhelmed, you go on vacation and then by day 3, you're sick and you spent your whole vacation in bed because now your body's like, oh, okay, now you want to deal with the stress? Fine. Now we can actually deal with it. Your immune system is being suppressed, but it doesn't mean you don't have an issue or a need. And when you think of the impact of this on your business, I want to ground us in some stats as well and just some definitions because I think it's really helpful to understand. When we talk about in mental health and in health, we talk about the allostatic load. And that is basically the cumulative impact of chronic stress on your body and your brain. And it is how your body and your brain adapts to stress until they can no longer adapt to stress, until you break down. We also think about the term weathering, and this was gifted to us a while ago, and it really describes the premature aging and the health decline of our bodies due to repeated exposures of stress, whether that's racism, misogynoir, inadequate housing, toxic workplace cultures, which, by the way, is one of the key drivers to the statistics around workplace well-being in America, where we see that 76% of US workers say they have a mental health condition, and 84% say that their jobs are responsible for at least one. And one of the key drivers for that is toxic leadership and discrimination in the workplace. Now, if you add in different intersecting identities, I identify as Black, immigrant woman with non-apparent disabilities, etc. What does it say to navigate the world with all of those intersecting identities and more and keep having the same results told to you are it's your fault? But when we look at statistics, for example, in 2023 or 2024, I believe, we had reports, particularly around Mental Health America, talking about the fact that almost 65% of Black professionals talked about being burnt out. 65% of Black professionals. Do you know how many professionals exist in this country that identify as Black? And almost 65% were saying they were burnt out. But a little more than a quarter felt safe talking about it. Is that cultural? Is it because society has told us that we need to swallow our pain? Is it because we are ignored even when we speak up? It's that and more. And the most recent McKinsey Lean In report said that Black women are still 2.5 times less likely to receive mentorship and sponsorship in the workplace. And we've seen the same stats for the last several years. The Lean In report from 2020, 2021, 2022, et cetera, has said the same thing. So we know what's happening, but we ignore it because we may not value the person or the communities being impacted. And, when I think about that on entrepreneurship and your ability to innovate, if you're stressed, you can't innovate. And innovation is one of the key things necessary for driving your business. If you're stressed, how are you bringing in other people? You may have relational issues. You may have memory issues and challenges. And then physically, you're not feeling well. And if you're not feeling well, you can't show up as your best. And so I know you were coming in, and sorry, I wanted to frame those realities because overachievement becomes this mask that we are wearing to survive systems that were never built for us. And it's why many of us have left corporate American traditional workspaces to form our own companies, but we still don't receive the support and the mentorship. But what happens when that mask is the only face we're allowed to show? We break down. And that's what's happening to our communities and to our businesses.
Absolutely, it's so true because even as an entrepreneur, it's so hard to keep up and maintain. And then most entrepreneurs, especially when you're first starting out, you don't have the funding to hire help, so you're having people volunteer to help you. So you're still stressed trying to do the budget, trying to do the admin work, then trying to be the entrepreneur, to be the brand, to develop the content. So it's really challenging and really difficult, and definitely much more for people of color and for Black businesses. I know you know firsthand, and I know firsthand. I suffered a life-threatening illness last year, and it shouldn't take something like that to give someone the perspective. Okay, I'm not going to go back into the traditional workforce. I'm going to do this on my own, because either way, the way we're set up as a society, it's a very stressful situation.
Mm-hmm.
Sponsorship, mentorship is very much needed. Which brings me to one of my businesses that I developed. So I had Darlene Williams Consulting, but my parents, Reverend Rob Brown Jr. and Betty Jean Brown, I formed a business in their honor called Restoring Bountiful Joy, which honors their legacy, their initials, RBJ. And the purpose of the business is to help individuals restore bountiful joy. So not temporary happiness, not temporary joy, not joy that you have, for 1 minute and then you take that mask off and it's gone, but really bountiful joy to instill hope and inspiration in individuals. So this program is a grief program, it's a wellness program, and it really shifts to help individuals get to those hidden things that they're not even thinking about, that may be stopping them or sabotaging their joy and their process forward. So when you think about programs like Restoring Bountiful Joy and others that are out there, how do you think these programs can be instrumental in helping people who are carrying that trauma and that grief? Because you're showing up and you're pouring, and people say you can't pour from an empty cup. I think that's a little bit not true, because if that cup has a little bit of water in it, you're still trying to from it, but you're showing up, but you're really bleeding internally.
Yeah, you are. And I think that that's such a really powerful sentiment you just shared. You're showing up, but you're still bleeding internally. And there is a truth to not pouring from this empty cup. And we've heard this saying a lot, but we can't give from what we don't have, right? And I think that organizations and consultancies like yours really actually works to interrupt cycles that have been going on for a really long time. When we talk about Black leadership and entrepreneurship, and I talk about wellness, I'm not talking about a bubble bath. I'm talking about breaking cycles.
Yes,
And
yes.
I think that's exactly what Restoring Bountiful Joy is about. When I think about the emotional toll of leadership, particularly as a Black woman or a leader or people with different intersecting identities, it is not just about being overworked. It's about the hypervigilance. It's about the code switching. It's about the constant negotiation of your identity. It's the silencing. And I think that when I think through Restoring Bountiful Joy, I think how you're working to intentionally strip those things away, say, I see you, and let me partner with you to help you build what you didn't have before. And that's the thing that we don't really get. And I think why, Restoring Bountiful Joy and the work that you do in general, like all the things you do that are so many, I'm like, you are 5 people in one person. But I think that it is really about interrupting these cycles of harm and helping people learn how to lead in a way that's authentic to who they are while championing their story and honoring their humanity. And that is, I think, something that's very distinct about your approach in general. You as a human being, you're incredibly kind and gracious and brilliant, and you understand this, and you lead from a place of, I don't think other people need to be harmed just because I was.
Yeah.
And a lot of the programs that we have kind of address on a surface level these things, but I think that you're getting to a deep, deep level. And when I talk about the deep, deep level, and I'm not just saying this to you about interrupting cycles, I think it's also challenging this notion of the high functioning depression that we have, or that people say that we have, right? And while that term, I want to be clear, high functioning depression does not currently exist in the DSM, which is the manual that we use to diagnose mental health. And Dr. Judith Joseph, who is a renowned psychiatrist, and she's based in New York City, also from the Caribbean, brilliant. She has a book called High Functioning Depression. I want to be clear that for me, I don't know that we're functioning. I think we're masking.
Mm.
I would say we're high masking our depression, and that we're performing wellness in order to be palatable to the dominant culture. And I think that your program also is a way to challenge that, of saying, who are you? Who do you want to be? Here's the tools, here are some resources, but let's figure out, not giving you this cookie cutter of all of these leadership books written by the same white males that tell us XYZ, which doesn't fit into your story. What is your story? Who are you? And how do we work alongside you for you to find your voice, to find the type of leader you are? Something you've said to me a lot is that you're unique. Like you're not in competition with anybody else. Hopefully not. But I think that when I think of programs like yours, I also think on the longer term of how the coaching, the mentoring, the support, the integration of culture, of spirituality, all of these things help to shift on an epigenic level what is happening, right? Because when we think about wellness and well-being and the impact of this dehumanization, these toxic cultures, I mentioned it earlier, it is also impacting our physical health, and we pass that on from generation to generation. So I think of you also as this cycle starter, because we can talk about breaking cycles, that's great, but we need to start a new cycle. And I think you're starting a new cycle rooted in wellness, rooted in culture, rooted in humility, and centering humanity and care. And I think that's the difference. And I would say the differentiator with what you're doing, because you're not just addressing this burnout, right? You're addressing who people are and who people see themselves as, and challenging the lies that people have embodied because of the gaslighting we get in society. And that is, to me, a way that we honor humanity, and that you honor humanity in a way that's not just self-care and not focused on this silly self-care. I think self-care and the concept is quite silly, because self-care is doesn't exist without structural change. I think what you're doing is structural change.
I so appreciate that. And it's almost like you were listening to our conversation last night, all the things that you just said, one, I completely agree with you about self-care. So I love to get my hair done and love to get my nails done, but that's not self-care, right? That's taking a day to go and pamper myself and do something related to hygiene. Self-care
Mm-hmm.
is really taking care of yourself, spiritually, emotionally, physically, looking at your overall wellness. So that concept of what self-care is completely needs to be dismantled, and as far as the business, I like to tell my clients that I don't just teach healing, I've lived it. um,
Mm-hmm.
because I've lived it and I'm still living it, I now have the privilege and the honor of helping people reclaim their voice, reclaim their joy, and develop a path towards healing. And I think that's the work that we're all doing right now. You're doing that work as well. You have your weekly posts that you put out on LinkedIn, and the different panels that you're on, and your message is consistent. We have to really be able to trust ourselves to have these authentic, genuine conversations and call things out. Because until we do, we're just going to continue on that same path. Um, so, with that, I want to turn to the individual, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the individual person, they're listening to this conversation. They're like, wow, I think that's me. I think that's what I'm doing. But no, I'm not, because when I come home, I actually rest for 5 minutes before I jump back on the computer. So, I'm not going to, be exhausted or burn out. How can someone identify that this is them, right? How can someone identify the difference between, a divine delay in what is possibly going to happen to then burnout before they get there? I want to be able to, give people something to look at and say, you know what? I think I need to go talk to somebody that I may be on that trajectory. If I'm listening to this, how can I relate to what they're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I really like this because I think that it is important for us to identify and also know that there's none of us are a monolith. And I will give you general, but it doesn't mean that this is exact, right? So when we think about burnout, we're really thinking about the physical, the emotional, and mental exhaustion typically caused by long work, stress, demanding situations. Burnout is typically directly connected to workplace experiences, whereas compassion fatigue that we all sometimes people mix in is usually connected to caregiving. But I would say that, you know, if you are coming home, like what you described as burnout, honestly, from when you said I would wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, I would leave at 6 o'clock in the morning, go to work, be there before maintenance, be there all day, come home, that is burnout. When you feel you can't stop, when you feel as though if I'm not there, if I don't do this, everything's going to fall apart, whether that is real, imagined, or both, because people have put that on you or you put it on yourself. That is burnout. When you are really irritable a lot and you don't know why, everything and everyone is getting on your nerves. You may feel cynicism or being detached, not only from yourself, but from the things that would potentially give you pleasure and your work or other, you know, other areas of your life that you may have liked. You know, maybe you like dancing and going salsa dancing every Tuesday night, but you're exhausted because you keep going to work and doing all these work things. I can say for myself, I recognized it in many different employment situations I was in. You know, I would go to the gym. The gym was right next to a job. Literally, the door over was the gym. And when I started the job, I was like, oh, this is great. This is next to my gym. And I would go to the gym in the morning. I would shower. But eventually, because of the stress, I stopped going. I just would go home and veg out. Doom scrolling on your phone is
Mhm.
TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of that. That's another sign, you know, of, and we don't think of these things, right? Um, being again, I always go back to the brain fog because we think sometimes I'm just forgetful because I'm aging. No, it could be stress, right? And having these negative attitudes and just even the things that we call it anodenia, something that once gave you pleasure is no longer giving you pleasure anymore. And again, I was giving you that example of me in the gym, but there's other things that are happening to us. And I think that when we have ambiguous work expectations and poor communication and all of these other things that typically help foster burnout in the workplace, we also see it showing up in other areas of our lives. Are you having difficulty with sleeping, or you're resting for 8 hours, 10 hours, but you feel as though you only slept for 15 minutes? Are you having changes in your appetite? You're overeating or undereating? Are you having challenges with pain in your body, gut issues, you know, reproductive health issues? All of these are signs of stress in our bodies that can be connected to burnout. And do you feel as though if you were to walk away from this job or stop doing it right, just cold turkey stop, that you would be able to deal with that? Because if you feel as though you cannot, that may indicate that there's a deeper issue.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you're so right. And a lot of times we just look at those physical issues as, oh, I'm getting sick or something's happening. But if it happens so often on a frequent basis, then it could be burnout. And we should really pay attention to that. Thank you for giving those examples. And again, these are just examples. Everyone's situation is different, but
Mhm.
pay attention to your body, pay attention to your mind, pay attention to what's happening internally. And then if you see signs, please definitely get some assistance.
And also pay attention to your friends and colleagues and family, right? Because sometimes our friends, our colleagues, our family are telling us something, but we tend to, the people closest to us are the ones that may get our fire and our wrath more than other people because we feel safer. So we might blow up on them or ignore them. But the people that love you you're irreplaceable to the people that love you. I always tell people, your job, you're replaceable. How many times have we had a coworker or heard the stories of a colleague passing away at work and your desk is cleared within a few hours? You're replaceable to them, but you are absolutely irreplaceable to the people that love and value you. And so if your friends or colleagues or people are saying things around you or uncomfortable because they're afraid of you blowing up, I would also say that that's an important tell as well, because people that really care about you are going to call you in and say, hey, what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just watching on the news today. A week later, last Monday, we see what happened at 345 Park Avenue. Today, the building is open and everyone is back to work.
Yep.
4 people were murdered in that building, and of course the building has to function, but it's a business, right? Everyone's back to work.
Yep.
So we've been talking for 30 minutes. I can't believe time has gone so quickly. But I want to make sure that we don't leave without asking two more things that I want you to share with our audience, because I want to talk about legacy, right? We talked about, what happens to you as a person and how that impacts you, but it also impacts those close to you. It impacts your family, it impacts your children, your spouse. So when you think about your legacy, Dr. Claire, not just business, what legacy do you want to leave? But in how you lived your life and how you've led and how you've used your gift and your superpower to help the world.
I really love this. This is always an emotional question for me because the first response that comes to my mind is I want a well done, my good and faithful servant from God, right? That's what I want. And that a legacy of love. For me, my faith drives so much of what I do. Dr. Claire Speaks is an acronym, and while I don't always talk about it, that first essence speaks is spirit led. And so for me, the legacy that I want to leave is one of love, of one of transformation, one of hope, one of advocacy, one of justice, because to me, that is the very description of God. When I think about the leadership and the impact that I want to have, it's not about just being the first or the only. It's the one who also heals out loud. Because I, like you and many people, have navigated so much harm, and it has taken a toll on my mental health, on my wellness. It's why one of the primary reasons I found Dr. Claire Speaks is because I firmly believe in the importance of transformational leadership and empathy-centered leadership in mitigating the harm that we cause people. So I want to lead a collective of people who are sharing spaces that are honoring to their humanity. I don't believe that spaces can be brave. I don't believe spaces can be safe, but I really believe they can be honoring. And so I want to leave a legacy where people that look like me and other people in general feel valued, feel seen, feel supported. I want to be on the world stages, speaking and training and leading at the intersection of mental health and leadership and justice. And I want to make sure that every person I encounter sees God before they see me.
Amen. I love that. You're so amazing, Dr. Claire. Where can people find you? People want to reach out to you and have a consultation with you, to have you for a speaking engagement as a guest. Where can they find Dr. Claire Speaks LLC?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Yes, I am findable on drclairespeaks.com. And so it's one word, similar to what's going to show up on the bottom right, of my image. It's Dr. Claire Speaks LLC. You just write drclairespeaks.com and you will find me. And I welcome people reaching out via email or my contact form. And if you're looking for someone to speak, keynote, or do workshops around mental health and workplace well-being and transformative leadership, I am the place to go. And so I thank you for this opportunity. And again, it's drclairespeaks.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It has been an amazing conversation. I didn't expect anything less. We could probably talk for another half hour or so. So I have to have you back to have another conversation. Is there anything you would like to say to our audience? Any last words?
Yes, the thing I always tell people, there is no one ever in the planet and the history that is as unique, as wonderful, as amazing as you. You were divinely placed in this time, and your life has value. Your life has purpose. You are a gift to the world, and you're a gift to those around you. I hope that you honor your humanity and your wellness every single day and walk into the power and the grace that goes before you.
Amen. I want to say amen after that. Thank you, my sister. It's been a pleasure
It's
talking with
been a
you.
pleasure.
Everyone, this has been the Debrief with Dr. D, and we have had the amazing Dr. Claire Green-Forde with us from Dr. Claire Speaks LLC. Until next time, be well. Take care. Well, thank you for joining me today on the Debrief with Dr. D. If this episode spoke to your heart, share it with someone who needs a word of hope and clarity. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with our social media community. And remember, healing is not weakness, it's wisdom. You don't have to lead on empty. You don't have to rise alone.
You were built to lead, to heal, and to thrive from the inside out. Until next time, lead well, heal deep, and walk boldly. This is Dr. D signing off.